We conclude the 6th letter. Yesterday we learned a lot in this letter. He who sows charity, tzedakah, has a reward of truth. What's truth? So we spoke about compassion, and that we need to have compassion on ourselves. And what is the compassion on ourselves? Not to free ourselves of something, of things in life. Have compassion and, just free yourself of, responsibility or anything like that. That's not compassion. Compassion means recognizing that you're better than that. You're greater than that. You're whole, you're complete, you're worthy. You're a divine soul, divine spark of God that's a part of you. That is your true identity. And you didn't live up to your true identity. For that, if we have compassion. That's the idea that we learned yesterday. So just bear that in mind, and we're going to bring it back. Today, the Alter Rebbe tells us that it's well known. Of course, it's well known because we study Tanya. What's well known? There are two types of awe of God and two types of love of God. The first type, a lower type, it's a love that's born out of our understanding and our cognitive recognition and awareness of God and God's greatness as creator in my life, in the world around me. And that awareness, that mindfulness, that understanding gives birth to a love and awe of God. Something that we've spoken about in the past at great length. As a matter of fact, until from chapters 10 through 17 in the first part of Tanya, really about that, about the power of the mind. The mind has dominion over the heart, and the mind has the capacity through that, awareness, through that understanding of God's greatness, God as creator, God in our lives, and so on, that we can have an awe and love of God. That's the first level. But then there's a latter type of love and awe that comes afterwards. It comes from above. It's a gift. It's a gift. In other words, you can't acquire it on your own. You can acquire the lower level, and once you've acquired that lower level, then you can be gifted this higher level. Now, this concept of a gift, we see it as the Torah explains, that God gave a gift to the Kohanim, the priests, their service as a gift. In other words, mystically, the priesthood refers to the attribute of love, and likewise awe. And it's a gift from above. Now, here he doesn't elaborate on what that gift is, but in other places the Alter Rebbe elaborates that the gift is that we can actually delight in the divine. Rather than yearning for it, you delight in it. But we're going to leave that for the moment. So there's no comparison between the two types of love. One is a human love that we can achieve through our minds, which is phenomenal, by the way, that we can use our minds in such a way that can actually bring us to a love and awe of God. But that is no comparison, that love and awe, as it is when it's gifted from above, when God the Creator gives it to us. Just as there's no comparison between the creator and the created. Likewise, there's no comparison between the love and awe that's generated by human endeavor to that which comes thereafter, that is gifted after you've done this first level. Then you get gifted this from above. And this is what's called truth. This higher level of love and awe is referred to truth. The seal of God is truth. And in relation to God, there's no other truth. He's the only truth. He's the absolute truth. Therefore, the love and awe of God that comes from him, that he gifts and gives to us, is indeed truth. So the question is, how do you get this? How can you achieve this? By the way, truth means, like the word in Hebrew, emes, truth. Aleph Mem Tov. It's the first letter, middle letter, and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. What makes it truth? It's consistent. It's consistent. The human mind and the human heart are inconsistent. We understand something today like this, tomorrow we understand it differently, and therefore that gives us different feelings in the heart. It's inconsistent. That's human, that's normal. That's why it's gifted from above. God is truth. God is consistent. So he's giving us the capacity that we can also have consistency in the love and awe of God. That's truth. Now, how do you get that, though? That seems like, how do you get, think about it. We're not consistent in our lives. Think about even relationships that we have. Are we consistent in our feelings towards our own spouse, our own children? Oh, hi, yo-yo. So how do you gain this truth? To merit this loftier level of love and awe. And again, it comes after the first level is attained. So the Alter Rebbe says it's by arousing great compassion in God's eyes for the spark of godliness that we have in our soul. Right? The compassion that we spoke about earlier. Which this is the attribute of Jacob, Yaakov, our forefather. He is the attribute of compassion. As it says, compassion bolts from one end to the other end. It brings two opposites together and brings them together. As we mentioned yesterday at length, particularly in TRC. Meaning, it can come from one extreme to another. Compassion, because it is a mixture of kindness and judgment. So it can come, the kindness, the light of God. That kind light of God can come into a place of judgment, of darkness. That's compassion. That I can sit in darkness and God is the light unto me. God's kindness prevails over the darkness and illuminates. That's compassion. That I can have done something that's dark, and yet I have compassion over me because I know I am light. The light of God is me. So I have compassion over the true me. That I may be sitting in the darkness in what I did, and I have compassion. So the first thing is to have compassion over yourself, over the godliness in you. Right? And that's why we're inconsistent. We can have a love that waxes and wanes, just as we do in human relations, so it's going to be with God. But in order that it should be true, that it doesn't wax and wane, that has a consistency to it, is we have compassion on ourselves, on our true selves. That the spark of God, that's our true selves, and yet we recognize that I sit in darkness in this negativity that I may be engaged in. And when I can have compassion in this manner, that is the beginning. However, that's not sufficient, because this compassion also has to be done in truth. And we're looking for the true love and awe, so we need to have true compassion. So, how can we arouse God's supreme compassion from the truth of God when we have compassion for ourselves and our situation, but then we have to connect it with another truth? It's not enough that I have compassion for me. I need now to express that compassion for another. How do you express compassion for another? What is the most simple way, or the real way? Charity. Give. Practice the attribute of tzedakah, of charity, which is the attribute of compassion, to give to those that don't have. Right? And through that you revive a lowly spirit. Now, of course, it means charity in the sense of actual money, but of course, acts of loving kindness and charity also, when you give somebody something that revives their spirit as a compassion towards them, that's practicing the attribute of charity. And the arousal from below, when we do this, not only have compassion for ourselves, that we sit in darkness and we are much greater and we have a peace of God in us, and we have compassion over that. But when we now give to another and show compassion to them, that elicits an arousal from below to above, and arouses those who sleep and awaken those who slumber. It arouses God's great compassion and supernal attribute of kindness, which are concealed, and reveals and illuminates our lives with the truth of God into us and into the world with the light of God. This concludes the Alter Rebbe, is the idiom that's used, sowing, in relating to charity. Sowing meaning sowing the seed in the ground. Right? That's how we began this letter. We began the letter with the words, Zerei tzedakah schar emes, that one who sows charity, the reward is truth. So through charity you're getting truth, that you're getting the truth of God's love and awe that is given to us, that we can have that love and awe, a true love and awe. And that's why it says to sow charity, because through that you cause, right? When you plant a seed, what are you doing? You're causing something to sprout. What are you causing to sprout? Truth. Causing something, truth to be, that which is hidden in the ground will sprout and be revealed. The truth of God, the truth of that love and awe will sprout in us. Especially so, says the Alter Rebbe, when the charity is given to, as the Alter Rebbe was collecting in those days, for those in need in the Holy Land. May be built and established freely in our days, he says. Truth shall sprout out forth from the land. The land alludes to the land of Israel, the sphere of Malchus above, by sowing charity in it, and their kindness and great compassion be gathered into it and gleaned in it, and will arouse the supreme grace that is hidden and concealed, and that it should be revealed. So through tzedakah shall you be firmly established. Powerful idea. So compassion means making a judgment and yet seeing that there's something greater. Usually we make a judgment. Oh, that was a stupid thing I did. That's a judgment. Compassion means you made a judgment. Yeah, a dark thing. But then at the same time, but that's not me. It doesn't befit me, that thing that I did. I'm greater than that. I am a piece of the divine. And therefore, it lifts you up. As opposed to a judgment, just on its own, could, might bring you down. Doesn't have to bring you down, but it could. That's a distinction between the two. As we actually in TRC yesterday went into great length to discuss. Okay, let's get some questions over here. Some conversation. Davida, how do you deal with the guilt of sinning and the hurt of making a disconnect from Hashem, which is stopping us from having compassion on ourselves? Listen to, that's exactly what we spoke about yesterday at TRC. We'll have to, you'll join us. That's a lengthy discussion. Good question. Excellent. I don't see Chris. I guess I lost that feed. If you could put it in again, the question, that would be great. Okay. There is a question here from Rachel. Is a part of compassion seeing a person's potential for good and giving of yourself in order to aid that potential? Exactly. But it's also with making a judgment. When you're giving to the poor, you're seeing their poorness, which you're making a judgment. Right? Judgment doesn't mean a bad thing. We make judgments, and we need to make judgments. It's appropriate to make judgments. Judgments that are appropriate, that is. Not all judgments are appropriate, right? So if you're looking at someone's situation and you want to understand what their situation is, you're making a judgment. Oh, are they poor? Are they in need then? So you can make the judgment, oh, they're poor, and that's it, and leave it there. Compassion means then you don't just make the judgment, right? You can make the judgment, oh, they're poor. You know what? Get a job, you won't be poor. Be responsible. And compassion means that, you made that judgment. Yeah, maybe they're being a little lackadaisical about getting a job. Nonetheless, you're giving. In other words, you're still giving. So that's the way we need to deal with others. Now, sometimes you need to be strong judgment, right? Sometimes we need to do that. It really depends on the situation. There's not always compassion is correct. For example, the drug addict, you have compassion, and then you give to them money, you're destroying their lives. For them, maybe you have to be strict judgment. Strict judgment. You get off the drugs, you go to, detox or whatever it is, you'll be helped. You don't go, you won't get help. Right? Otherwise, you're just feeding the habit. Chris, do we live in a thought world of sorts? Does the mind create the reality? Good question. In a sense, we do live between what goes on in our heads, right? Because our perception on it is what, for us, makes what we sense as reality. So yeah, there's a truth to that. is that the way? Yeah, there's a truth to that. Of course, the way we perceive things, that's the way we think things are. We have to be careful with that. Know that that's just the way I'm perceiving it. It may not be ultimate reality, right? Okay. Anybody else? Questions, comments, thoughts? All right. Beautiful. I think we did it all. All right, folks. Our conversation will, of course, continue. Rambam coming. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you for Chabad Sich and Kadesh Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you, Tanya. Have a wonderful day and a good Shabbos. Rabbi.